accomplish their fate. You must then infiltrate the refinery and complete demolitions deployment. Trigger detonation only when the main swarm has entered the plaza zone. Captain Akaram will coordinate our efforts over Vox.
Deployed already!
So, a lot of dumb lefties say Hamas are freedom fighters or resistance and try to obfuscate away from the terrorism, rape, murder of civilians, deliberate targeting of civilians, beheadings, burning alive of families of civilians in their homes, capture and torture of civilian hostages for years, holding the the dead bodies of the hostages you took to inflict pain on the surviving members of the families left over in Israel, assuming of course they didn't kill them when they originally took the hostages. So given all that, I figured, hey, let's look at a Western example of what a guerrilla campaign against an occupying force should look like. What a legitimate resistance, like a justified one, should actually look like, and how it should function as a comparison, let's say. Because, like, in my opinion, Hamas just does not fall into the category of like a proper guerrilla force, guerrilla resistance force. It's something different. It's got its own sort of definition. If you read books on guerrilla warfare, most of them aren't about killing your own civilians and shit like that. They are, if anything, providing justice to the civilians from the occupying force with ambushes and making sure the civilians are fed and that sort of deal. In the worst case scenarios, dealing with the informants within the society that betray you to the occupying force. Nowhere in guerrilla warfare does it say maximize the death of your own civilians to use as global propaganda for a proxy in Iran to destabilize relationships with Saudi Arabia. Nowhere has in guerrilla warfare ever have guerrilla forces fighting against an occupation, fighting to build their own government, that sort of deal, have they ever treated their own civilians like this? Like, we're not just talking about using them as human shields. They use them as human shields. They also torture them. They also kill them. They also starve them. They seize the aid meant for them, and they use hunger as a weapon to keep them on board. Never before has it been done with an ideological bent before either. You've had sectarian violence and that sort of thing, but never with a religion that's basically a suicide cult that wants to genocide like its neighbor, right? Right, anyway, so given all that, given how they don't fit the definition of guerrilla warfare, of an insurrection, sort of fighting an occupying oppressive force or anything like that, I figured I'd have a look at the IRA just as a comparison to how they should be functioning, rather than what they're actually doing as like a horrible guerrilla terror proxy force, basically doing a giant propaganda terrorism war for the ultimate goal of destabilizing the relationship between the US and Israel, and US and Saudi Arabia, and Israel and Saudi Arabia, the more stable elements of the Islamic world, if there are any. There's not really. Like, if you ask Grok how many Islamic child brides there are, it will give you between 600 million and 900 million since 1900s. That's unacceptable. Like, the error between those two measurements if the error between those two measurements alone happened in the West, it would be the single worst thing that has ever happened in the West. Like, if you just said in the West, 300 million child brides, 300 million pedophilic rapes of, like, young girls, under 18 girls, that would be the worst thing that's ever happened in the West. That'd be up there in terms of bad with, like war crimes. Like, you really have to sort of stretch and look to see shit as bad as that in the West. Like, I mean, if you stretch it all the way out, you might find wars that were about as bad, but, like, even the wars were, like, let's say the war between, like, the Soviet Union and Nazi Germany. That's really bad, right? That was one of the most horrible wars on the Eastern Front, filled with war crimes, filled with civilian deaths and rapes and murders and all that sort of thing. Like, the rapes in that section, that theatre of war, like the upper end of those rapes, don't even come close to 300,000. It's like 1 million at most. Like, people don't realise how bad the Islamic world is. And, like, that's their error brackets for the conservative estimation from Grok, 300 million. Like, the upper estimate of that conservative estimate is 900 million, which is nearly 1 billion pedophilic rapes in the Muslim world. Like, absolutely atrocious. But anyway, back to the IRA. So, how many people total did the IRA kill? Like, in their guerrilla war against colonial British occupation, with their ultimate goal establishing, like, a united free Ireland, free from the yoke of the British, having their own representative government. How many people did they kill? They killed around 1,700 total. 500-ish police and security forces, basically oppressing the Irish, and about 650 civilians. Among the civilians were a bunch of informants for the British occupation, and then there was a fair bit of collateral from their bombing campaign, which lost them a lot of favour. The two worst crimes they committed were the Bloody Sunday bombings and the Birmingham pub bombing. The Birmingham pub bombing was actually unsanctioned by the IRA. It was conducted by, like, a rogue unit without sanction from the IRA. And the bombings of bus stops and infrastructure and that sort of thing, that was designed to interrupt and disrupt commerce in Ireland, basically attempting to attack the wealth that Britain was draining out of Ireland, just to disrupt the commerce. That was the intent of it. They display that they were, like, ungovernable, right? Killed dozens, wounded hundreds. Among them were policemen who they were targeting. So, what did the British do to, trigger this guerrilla war with the IRA? Well, they killed like 360 to 400 Irish, and 180 to 200 of those were Catholic. There was quite a bit of sectarian violence between the Catholics and the Protestants, both of them Christians, but it was like a sort of two-tiered sort of system, where British, favoured their own, and the Irish were discriminated against, basically. So on Bloody Sunday, the British shot 26 unarmed people during like a big protest thing. 14 of these were killed and 7 of those were teenagers. So right off the bat, you've got the British responding to protests with force, killing people. There was another one, the killing of 11 in the Ballymurphy massacre as well. And the British also had like an extrajudicial service called the MRF, which sanctioned the killings of civilians extrajudiciously, like outside of the law, as like sort of like a special unit. And they were killing people they assumed were involved with the IRA, but they didn't have a whole lot of proof, and the killings were assassination style, so most of the people they killed with surprise when they were unarmed, and basically murder, so none of it looked good. And a couple of the people they killed with these MRF hits were found not to have been involved with the IRA, so outright murder a couple of times as well. These murders and massacres also incited riots, and these riots were put down with either bullets or rubber bullets. Rubber bullets and bullets obviously used in the manner that they were used killed people. Like even the rubber bullets, like if you shoot someone in the head with a rubber bullet, fucks them up. And like in addition to that, the people that they were killed, like the Irish didn't get any justice for the people that were killed, either in the riots or in the assassinations. So yeah, like none of it's good. And to make it worse, like a bunch of the people killed, yeah, it was very sectarian and tribal, just along those Protestant Catholic lines. So every time a Catholic got killed, it looked bad. Every time a Protestant got killed, yeah, it just triggered like more and more tribal hate. So, do the methods of the IRA compare to Hamas and other Islamic forces active in Gaza and Israel? No, not really, not at all actually. The IRA mainly killed civilian informants for the British and the British police, British aligned police and security forces, mostly with bombings and urban guerrilla sniping, assassination. They abducted a few of the informants, tortured them, killed them. They did have a ton of sectarian violence collateral of civilians, unfortunately, especially in their bombing campaign. But look, as we've already mentioned, their total numbers was 1,700. Like that, Hamas broke that in a single massacre when they on October 7th. So, and they did that with exclusively civilians, not against army forces that were, deliberately persecuting them, discriminating against them, occupying them, that sort of deal. They literally crossed into Israel and just killed and kidnapped a bunch of civilians. The IRA just had much better of a case, right? Like at that point it didn't have its own state, like Hamas did. Hamas didn't, like the IRA didn't cross any borders to do it, didn't attack civilians egregiously, just like the civilians that they had access to. The people in the kibbutz close to the areas that were attacked were mostly pro-Palestinian, so it would be like as if the IRA were killing their own, killing Catholics. It was just horrible. And like the IRA didn't rape, didn't behead, didn't do any of that. Like the intent of Hamas cannot be overstated here either. Like the IRA actually attempted to minimize civilian casualties, like outside of all of this sectarian reprisal and the killing of traitorous, or how they viewed as traitorous, British informants, which were civilians. Like they tried to minimize civilian casualties outside of that in a decent manner, where like, and they even lost a ton of support when they started doing bombing campaigns. Like Hamas, on the other hand, just openly and flagrantly targets like innocent Jewish civilians. Like before October 7th, just thousands of rockets. Like some of them fall short or like get intercepted, falling on their own people, which they just blame Israel for as well. And like they just also just kill their own people and like torture them to keep them in line. Like they seize their international welfare, which is like intended for their people, which should be their responsibility. They're people who are like allegedly starving, and they just either sell it or use it to influence like their starving people for favors and compliance. Like it'd be like if the IRA were doing that, like the world was giving the IRA money, and then but it was meant for like the Catholics, and then the IRA was just starving the Catholics and using the money to buy arms and shit to just fight the British. Like the comparison, there's like no comparison morally speaking. Like they're yeah, like absolute fucking trash. And like, I suppose you can make the case that the IRA used their own civilians a little bit as, well, they didn't even really use them as human shields, they more used them as visual cover. But they didn't do it with the intent of triggering reprisal. Like, as said before, most of their violence was either bombings or guerrilla sniping. Guerrilla sniping is just taking one shot from a window, hitting the last guy and the patrol as he goes around the corner, and then sort of ditching the gun, running away sort of thing before you can get caught. It's not firing rockets from like a mosque and then deliberately holding the civilians there and waiting for like an Israeli counter airstrike to level the mosque and kill the civilians, just so you can use the civilians as propaganda for Iran's purposes. Like, there's no comparison here between the methods, right, and the intent of the methods. Alright, so, like, what else? Was the IRA justified in what they were doing? Were they being, like, actively repressed? Well, they weren't given the right to fair voting or representation in government. Protestants were given favour in housing, so the Catholics were discriminated against in housing in like a sectarian way. They were discriminated against in terms of jobs and employment, and they had no right to freedom of assembly or expression. When they did this with their crowds, protests and riots, they were shot and killed with both bullets and rubber bullets. They didn't receive any due process or fair treatment under the law, faced in some instances like extrajudicial killing from the MRF, when they were killed unarmed, assassination style. There was never any justice for the Irish against these perpetrators either. When they were arrested, they were usually pretty brutally interrogated and tortured, like upon capture, and they had no gun rights or anything like that. So it pretty much was like a British occupation. So, like, can you equivocate between these two things? Like, is this Irish guerrilla war with surgical targeting of informants occupying forces until their latter like ill-advised bombing campaign that had a bunch of civilian collateral, can you compare that with Hamas's deliberate attempts to starve their own people, kill their own people for propaganda, torture their own people for propaganda? Like, there's no comparison between the two, right? Like, one had its own state. Like, the Israelis pulled out. They kept a blockade on Gaza, yes, fair enough. They kept a blockade on Gaza because the Palestinians were launching rockets at them. They couldn't allow rockets and gun material to get in. Otherwise, they would just be facing security threats constantly from all the rockets Gaza was launching in. Same deal with guerrilla sniping. Like an extremely well-equipped, well-armed force still can get picked at by guerrilla snipers, just like a lone gunman shooting from a window. Like, just because you're well-trained and well-equipped, like a single loner can still do some damage. Like, that's the principle. Like, you don't want Islamic terrorists to get guns. Like, look what they did in that nightclub shooting in America. Like, they just got a gun and they killed what was it, between 30 and 60 people in a nightclub. And like, that is the goal of Islamic terrorists, to instill terror and to kill Jews. Like, you don't have a blockade there and then they can get arms in and then they can get rockets in and they can continuously attack Jewish civilians. Like, they've pretty much been indoctrinated to do, and they ideologically want to do because of their religion. Like, yeah, you can't even compare them. Like, this, you know, Israel-Gaza war is a thing of its own. It's not like a traditional guerrilla war where it's like a guerrilla terror proxy war, like masquerading as a guerrilla war. It follows none of the laws of guerrilla war. It's trying to maximize civilian casualties, maximize the guerrilla force's civilian casualties. Like, just that simple one thing in guerrilla war is what you're not meant to do. Because if you maximize civilian casualties and civilian repression, you'll find them, you know, operating with the oppressors. Like, if you're the guerrilla force, you don't want to be the more oppressive, evil force, especially to the civilians, otherwise they'll just betray you. But there's some sort of ideological, religious angle here where martyrdom's embraced and they're just radicalized. So you've got an Islamic bent to it, where that rule of guerrilla warfare is just tipped on its head, and you're just using an entire suicidal population, not even effectively in warfare, by the way, just to just to kill Jews and sour relationships by using propaganda. It's the same principle as the Vietnam War. The idea that America's war machine costs so much, so the more time that it's in the field, the more it costs taxpayers. Taxpayers will eventually get sick of it, or that whole deal. But unlike in Vietnam, where the Vietnamese were essentially forced into communism by American antagonism, here you've got a legitimately evil force in Hamas that is doing horrible shit. Like, horrible war crimes. October 7 was like 7 or 8 war crimes just stacked on one on top of the other. And the hostages basically meant that it forced a response. Like, all these Vietnam era hippies buying all this, you know, Qatari propaganda backing Hamas, they don't realize how bad this is compared to something like Vietnam. Like, it's not good. Like, Vietnam, fair enough, you kind of had a point. They were blowing up villages and stuff, and they did antagonize them into communism, and it looked bad, and it was bad. But this is different. This is very, very different. This is like ideological evil terrorists following the Vietnam script. But, like, because they're inbred, they're just a little bit off. They can't quite work out. What do you mean? We're not meant to kill our own civilians? Like, and like, that's coming to a head now. with the US and Israel actually delivering aid within Gaza, like, it still probably won't do good because the whole population is radicalized. They're gonna probably turn to, like, Islamic terrorism and stuff anyway. But it's a sound idea to get them to betray Hamas by treating them better than Hamas is treating them. But we'll just see how far it goes, because there's also this, well, there's taqiyya, and there's a principle of Islamic supremacy. Like, it's assumed within Islamic doctrine that they're better than other people, like unbelievers and that sort of deal. There's no thoughts of tolerance or equality there, and because of that, and because of the radicalism, and because they're doctrinally permitted to lie with taqiyya, that they will easily be able to make it seem like they're on the US's side, and the US will never have any inkling like otherwise. And like the same with the Jews, they probably generationally hate the Jews there. To put it into perspective, like during the second Intifada, these people were using their own children as suicide bombs to kill Jewish civilians. That is a level of hatred that you can't really comprehend. Like, and a level of not appreciating the life of your children that you can't comprehend, right? Would you ever use, like, your child as a suicide bomb to kill innocent civilians that you've never met before? Out of some level of hatred. That'd be like me wanting to use children, if I ever have any, to kill leftists. It wouldn't even cross my mind, right? But like, that's what you're dealing with these fucking Islamists. And like, not even using their children. Like, at least with child suicide bombing, it's like a 1-to-1. You're causing like a Jewish casualty with your sacrifice of your child, right? With Hamas and that, it's not even like a 1-to-1. You're inflicting a casualty with the child. It's like you sacrifice your child in a propaganda attempt to hurt the relationship between Israel and Saudi Arabia, or the US and Saudi Arabia, right? Like, it's a very different thing. Like sacrificing your child to that cause, to like a geopolitical cause, rather than a cause that at least is producing instant results and instant gratification. Say you're radicalized and you really want to kill Jews. Like, it's a level of there should be like a level of distrust towards Islamic people, like that they need to prove themselves before you give them aid. And the idea that the powers in the West and the UN are just flooding the area with aid, which is Hamas is like taxing, seizing, selling, and controlling to force compliance of their own civilian population. Like, can we just stop? Can we just stop giving them fucking aid? Like, if we stop giving them aid, Israel's blockade might fucking work, and then they might start rethinking some of their decisions to back Hamas, like, fanatically and religiously. Like, give them some time out, rather than, flood the area with welfare, like, to a people which want to use their own children to kill you. Like, it should be... And look, we probably can't afford the foreign aid either. Like, just in Australia and Britain, UK, America. Like, we've got our own problems. Like, why are we flooding that area with our money? Like, that should be fucking put to a vote. Like, fair enough, you don't want to fund Israel's war machine, endless war machine against Hamas, because Hamas is deliberately trying to draw that war out into like a attrition war like Vietnam Wars. Fair enough. But why on the other side would we ever fucking give any money to Hamas? They're like the most evil cunts ever. They're like a continuation of the evil friggin' pedophile Muslim forces, and the Taliban, like deliberately ethnically cleansing minorities in their own country, killing Christians and Jews and Armenians and all that sort of shit in their own countries, massacring Kurds, like the whole deal. Like, why would we ever give money to radicals like that? Even if it's like, given the whole dead baby urgency deal, like, can we just not give them money? Like, why would you fucking idiots ever give those people money? And it's not just their money that they're giving away, it's the taxpayer money, it's all of our money. And it's something we should never have done, we should never do, we should stop doing immediately. Like, okay, you want to stop selling arms to Israel, deal, but we also stop giving money to the UN to give to Gaza, and we stop giving money directly to Gaza. How's that sound? Also, we do Trump's Muslim ban, we don't take any Muslims in because they can't be trusted. It's like, what? There's been like a car attack a week in Europe. Like, for a couple of weeks now. Why would you want to inflict that upon your own civilians? Like, one car attack, like, that affects hundreds of people. Like, just the people that see it, the people that are injured by it, the people that are killed by it, the families of the people that are killed by it, the families of the people that are injured by it, the people that can't work anymore, taxpayer funding all the people that can't work anymore. Like, those things, they're called terrorists for a reason. They have a major effect on the population, and then we just have stupid fucking leftist policy of, oh no, we'll bring them in. We can't eat. Like, it's not that we don't even like scan them properly or screen them properly, it's that we can't screen them properly. Like, there have been doctors which otherwise don't look very involved with Islam and terrorism, like 40-year-old, 50-year-old doctors who should be like mentally stable, should be wealthy, should have families, should know what they want in life, that just one day decide to fucking, you know, do a car attack into like a crowd of Christians. Like, there's no way to know. And we just have stupid fucking leftist policy bringing them like as many of those in as we can.
Down 90% unfallen. Swarm annihilation confirmed. Excellent work. Move to extract.